My ex-husband used to give me $200 a week, but I thought it wasn't enough, so I sued him. I lost, and now he only gives me $60 a week. I asked him to go back to giving us $200, but he doesn't want to. Fridays always smelled like false tranquility. That $200 bill that Julio handed me with an exasperating punctuality was like a band-aid on a wound that never closed. I took it with a tense smile, feigning gratitude while inside I was boiling. $200. For him, it was surely the cheap price of his clear conscience, the fee he paid to continue living his carefree single life without remorse. For me, it was the weekly reminder that my life and Luna's were valued at an amount that was not even enough for us to breathe. I would see him arrive, always impeccable in his office shirt with the smell of his cheap cologne that made me nauseous. He would get out of the car that I noticed he had recently washed. He spent money on washing his car while his daughter and I squeezed into an apartment that felt smaller and smaller. That's what I called twisted priorities. He believed that with that gesture, with that bill, he was fulfilling his duty. But a father, a real man, doesn't just fulfill a duty. He goes out of his way, he breaks himself in two. And Julio never broke himself for anyone, much less for us. Everyone thinks that $200 a week is a fortune. I invite you to live a month in my shoes. Do you know what it costs to support a 7-year-old girl? Luna is not a luxury, she is a person. She needs clothes that don't get too small in 2 months, shoes that don't destroy her feet, food that isn't pure sugar and preservatives. She wants to go to her friends' birthday parties and bring a decent gift, not the cheapest piece of junk from the store. She wants, God forbid, to take ballet classes. And what should I dress in rags and feed myself only on air so that he lacks for nothing? My sacrifice is invisible. My career was cut short when Luna was born. My dreams were postponed indefinitely, and his reward was a $200 bill and the condescending smile of a man who thinks that with that he settles his eternal debt. I remember the nights after Luna fell asleep, I would take out the calculator and add, subtract, multiply. The $800 a month would go up in smoke, rent, electricity, water, school, internet, food, transportation. I was always in the red, always. And I would look at Julio's photos on social media, dining in nice restaurants, traveling with his friends. Was that fair that he lived his prosperous single life while we barely survived on his generous contribution? No, it wasn't fair. It was an insult disguised as child support. The last straw was Luna's birthday. I promised her she would have a party in the park with her friends, a cake, balloons. Julio said he would contribute the usual. That week's $200 went to the cake and decorations. I had to put my own already scarce money for the soft drinks, the plates, the candy bags. He came to the party, took smiling pictures with Luna in his arms, left early because he had things to do. That night, cleaning up the party leftovers with my hands sticky with glucose and my heart swollen with rage, I knew I couldn't go on like this. I wasn't asking for a luxury, I was demanding justice. And if he didn't want to give it to us voluntarily, I would have to force him. The idea of suing him began as a whisper in the darkest part of my mind, the part that knows the true texture of resentment. At first, I rejected it. He's my daughter's father, I told myself. But then I would look at Luna, so innocent, so deserving of the best, and I would see how her small desires crashed against the insurmountable wall of my bank account. Was it fair for her? No, I couldn't let the daughter of both of us grow up with less simply because her father was a miserable man who didn't understand the true meaning of the word provide. I did research on the internet, single mothers forums, Facebook groups. All the stories were the same, them fighting, them evading. I read about how judges aware of the economic disparity often increase child support. I filled myself with arguments. It wasn't greed, it was equity. Julio earned well, I knew it. He had a stable job at a logistics company. He drove the same car for years without major problems. He always had money for his hobbies. Why did Luna and I have to be the budget item he cut? I mentioned it to him once casually when he came to pick up Luna on a Saturday. Julio, with inflation, $200 doesn't go as far as it used to. Luna needs things. He looked at me with that calm that drives me crazy, as if he were talking to a capricious child. The agreement was $200. The era is what I can give. Manage better. Manage better. As if living on a shoestring was a financial strategy game. That phrase, manage better. It sealed his fate. It was proof that he didn't care, that he didn't see our struggle. He just wanted peace and quiet at a low cost. I hired a lawyer, a Mr. Robles, who in the initial consultation assured me I had a solid case. He made me feel powerful. Heard. Finally, someone understood that I wasn't a bitter woman, but a warrior mother fighting for her daughter's well-being. We filed the papers. When the sheriff served them to Julio, he called me furious. Are you crazy? Alara, a lawsuit. After everything I give you, his voice was a whiplash, but I armed myself with the certainty of my cause. It's not everything you give, Julio. It's how little you give, and it's not enough anymore. I hung up feeling like a vigilante. I truly believed that the judge would see my sacrifice. He would see Luna's eyes in a photo and order Julio to share his prosperity. It was the morally right thing to do. The day of the court was a programmed humiliation. I arrived in my best clothes, the ones that made me look serious and responsible, with a folder full of receipts and photos of Luna. Julio arrived in a suit I didn't know he had. He was accompanied by a lawyer who looked like he had stepped out of a television commercial, calm, with an almost imperceptible smile. I only had Mr. Robles, who suddenly seemed much less confident. Everything went wrong from the beginning. The judge, an older man with a face that had seen it all, didn't want to hear about sentimental injustices. He wanted numbers. Julio presented his pay stubs, his bank statements, a detailed budget of his expenses. He showed with terrifying clarity that after paying his taxes, his rent, his food, and his own basic expenses, the $200 he gave me was, I quote the judge, an appropriate and even generous contribution for his income. My turn was a disaster. I talked about ballet classes, about the shoes that were too small for her, about how expensive cheese was. The judge interrupted me. Miss, child support is to cover basic needs. Extracurricular activities are desirable but not mandatory for the father if he is within his ability to pay. I felt like the world was collapsing on me. He was saying that Luna didn't deserve ballet, that she had to settle for the basics. Julio from his table didn't even look at me. He looked bored. Then came the final blow. My lawyer, in a desperate attempt, argued that I had given up my career to care for Luna. The judge asked, and what has the mother done to re-enter the workforce now that the child is of school age? I was speechless. Work? What job? Who was going to hire me after years out of the system? It was another proof that the system was made to crush women like me. The ruling was swift and ruthless. The judge, based on the real evidence of the defendant's income and expenses, not only rejected my request for an increase, but also revised the child support downwards. He established that according to the official tables, what corresponded was $60 a week. 60. The sentence resonated in the courtroom like a gunshot. I had gone for more bread, and they had taken even the crumbs from me. Leaving that courtroom was like walking on poisoned cotton. Every step was an effort. I remember the look on Julio's face when we crossed paths in the hallway. It wasn't one of triumph, it was something worse, it was pity. A cold, distant pity. It's the law, Lara, he said with a voice so flat I wanted to scratch his face. Starting next week it will be what the judge ruled. I couldn't answer. I had such a large knot of rage and shame in my throat that I thought I would suffocate. The first week I received the 60 was a morning. Julio handed it to me in an envelope with the precision of a wicked accountant. It wasn't even cash, it was a check. I felt the cold paper between my fingers, and I knew it was a certificate of my defeat, of his Pyrrhic victory over the well-being of his own daughter. That night, sitting on the kitchen floor, I tore the check into tiny pieces. Then, with tears of fury, I pieced it back together with tape, because in the end I couldn't even afford the luxury of pride. I needed that money. I had to sit down with Luna and explain to her with the least painful words I could find that the ballet classes had to be suspended. Her little face fell. Why, Mommy? Is it because Daddy doesn't want to pay for them anymore? The question, innocent and accurate as a dart, pierced my heart. No, honey, it's just that things are a little difficult. A lie, it wasn't things, it was Julio. It was his stubbornness, his lack of heart, his desire to see me suffer. He had used the law as a weapon to punish me for daring to challenge his petty authority. I called him, I can't deny it. I called him pleading. Julio, please, this isn't about me, it's about Luna. $60 is not enough for anything. Could you please go back to giving us the 200? I'm asking you for her. There was a silence on the other end of the line, a silence that stretched like an abyss. Then his clear, firm voice. Alara, there was a court ruling. I stick to what the law determines. It's $60. Learn to live with it. And he hung up. Learn to live with it. That phrase became my epitaph. He didn't see his daughter suffering. He saw a legal principle to defend. He had exchanged his humanity for a judge's ruling. Now Fridays smell like defeat and a $60 bill. Julio has turned his punctuality into a torture. Every delivery is a reminder of his power and my impotence. He looks at me when he hands me the check, and I hold his gaze, trying to convey all my contempt. But I know he only sees a bitter woman. He has built his own narrative. He is the law-abiding citizen, the responsible father who follows the rules. And I am the confrontational ex who doesn't know how to be grateful for what she has. I have had to cut back on everything. The weekly shopping is now an anxiety-inducing exercise, calculating every cent. Luna's clothes are almost all secondhand. I have canceled the cable, I use the neighbor's Wi-Fi when I can, and I have learned to make soups with what's left over. It's a life of constant adjustment of small daily humiliations, and each one of them bears Julio's signature. He could end this tomorrow with a gesture with an "okay, I'll give you the 200. But he won't, because this is no longer about money, it's about winning. Sometimes in my darkest moments, I think maybe the judge was right about one thing. Maybe I should look for a job. But who would take care of Luna after school? How would I manage schedules? It's impossible. And besides, why should I carry that extra responsibility when he has the solution in his hands? It's his moral obligation beyond any law to make sure his daughter doesn't go without. He is failing. He is the villain of the story. My family tells me to bow my head to accept the situation. They don't understand. To accept would be to agree with him to admit that he had the right to cut back our lives. To deny Luna opportunities. I will never do it. As long as I breathe, I will know that this is his fault, his small, miserable revenge for taking him to court. He can keep his money and his cheap justice. I'll keep the truth, even if it's a truth that hurts more than hunger. The truth that my daughter's father chose to punish us both just to prove a point. And that point, whatever it is not worth the tears of a 7-year-old girl. Popular Reddit comments on the main story. Anonymous User 1. Your ability to rewrite reality is at least remarkable. You make a colossal strategic mistake by challenging an agreement that benefited you, and when the consequences of your own action blow up in your face, you proclaim yourself a victim. The $200 was a generous out-of-court settlement. You, driven by greed and a poorly disguised envy of his lifestyle, took him to a court where things are measured in numbers, not emotions. The judge did not side with him. He took it away from you because your case had no legal basis. You are the architect of your own misery. However, you insist on blaming the mason who only followed the plans you yourself drew. App's response. Strategic mistake. It was a necessity. You people don't understand that generous is subjective. For him, $200 was nothing. For us, it was survival. I couldn't keep surviving. We deserve to live. The judge didn't see beyond his cold papers. He didn't see the daily sacrifice, the sleepless nights, the loneliness. He just followed the law made by and for men like Julio. My mistake was believing that justice was just. User. Anonymous. The most tragic thing about all this is not your financial situation, but the emotional damage you are causing your daughter. You use Luna as a human shield to justify your greed. It's for her as your mantra, but every one of your actions proves the opposite. You dragged her into a legal conflict with her father. You took away her activities because you can't manage a budget even with $200 a week free that many entire families would wish for. And now you are raising her in resentment towards her own father. You are raising a child to see the world as a place of debts and victimhood, and that is a much poorer inheritance than any amount of money. App's response. I am damaging her. He is damaging her by depriving her of a decent childhood. Do you think I like telling her she can't do ballet or seeing her disappointed face? She knows that things changed after the lawsuit. She is smart. I don't instill resentment in her. She lives the reality that her father has chosen for us. If he doesn't want to be the villain of this story, then he should stop acting like one. The only poor inheritance here is that of a father who prioritizes his pride over his daughter's smile. Anonymous User 3. Let's analyze your logic. You see, you lose. The consequences are negative for you, and your conclusion is that Julio is a monster. At what point do you stop to consider that maybe, just maybe, the initial mistake was yours? He simply defended what was a legally sound agreement. The fact that the judge reduced the child support clearly indicates that what he was giving was more than what the law required. Instead of being grateful for the years you received more than you were due, sued him and lost the privilege. Poetic justice exists, and it just gave you a reality check. Response from the: it wasn't a privilege. It was his obligation to be grateful that he complied with the minimum that his conscience allowed him. He didn't defend himself. He counterattacked viciously. He could have been content with the judge denying the increase, but he didn't want to make sure to hurt to punish. That reduction wasn't poetic justice, it was his premeditated revenge. He used the system to hit me harder, and the system allowed him. That doesn't make it right, it makes it despicable. Anonymous User. 4. Manage better. That phrase hurt you so much because it's the truth you don't want to hear. Instead of planning of looking for ways to generate supplementary income now that your daughter is of school age, you invested all your time and energy and the savings you claim not to have in a legal battle lost in advance. The real victim is Luna, trapped in the middle of her parents' ego war. But at least Julio seems to be protecting his financial and emotional stability by not giving in to your blackmail. If he gave in, he would only be teaching his daughter that legal tantrums work. App's response. Blackmail tantrum. I am fighting for my daughter's quality of life. Why does the solution always fall on me? Why should I look for 3 jobs while he lives comfortably with one? That's fair. He is not protecting anything except his ego. If he gave in, he wouldn't be teaching about tantrums, he would be teaching about empathy, about real paternal responsibility. But it seems that for some, empathy is synonymous with weakness. Update 1. It has been 6 weeks since the ruling. 6 Fridays receiving that $60 check that feels like a materialized insult. Every time I see him approach, I feel a pang of acid in my stomach. Today was different. He arrived with Luna. He had picked her up from school to take her for a routine medical checkup. I saw her get out of his car laughing with a small bag of candy in her hand. "Daddy bought them for me," she said happily. That bag of candy that he spent without thinking seemed to me a direct mockery. He could afford those superfluous luxuries to buy her affection, but he couldn't give us what was necessary. As Luna ran to her room, I confronted him at the door. "Seriously, Julio, candy with what we're going through? And you buy her candy?" He sighed with that annoyed expression that makes me feel like a nuisance. "Alara, it's just some candy. Don't be dramatic." I showed him the crumpled check in my hand. "This is not enough. Luna needs new shoes. The ones she has are giving her blisters. What do you want me to do? Have her go to school with bleeding feet?" I looked at him defiantly, hoping for a glimmer of compassion, of humanity. His response chilled my blood. "Shoes are a basic necessity. If $60 is not enough for you, use the candy money for that." He laughed a dry, humorless sound. "Oh wait, I bought the candy. Well, I guess you'll have to prioritize." I couldn't believe it. He was being sarcastic. He was enjoying this. "Julio, please," I said, and my voice sounded broken, which I hated. "Just this once. Help me with the shoes. They're expensive." He shook his head. His gaze was stone. "The ruling is clear. It's $60. If you need more, get a part-time job. Luna is 7 years old now. You don't need to be attached to her 24 hours a day." He turned on his heel and left, leaving me standing in the doorway with the useless check clenched in my fist and the feeling that I had lost every last shred of dignity. That night, reviewing the comments here, I saw that people like Anonymous User 4 are on his side. Do they think that managing better is the solution? How do you manage what doesn't exist? How do you prioritize when everything is a priority? I canceled the subscription to the educational magazine that Luna liked. I sold my old tablet for a pittance on a buy and sell website. They're patches. Desperate solutions for a problem that he could solve with a gesture. The most painful thing is that Luna asked me if Daddy was mad at us because we don't go on outings on Saturdays like we used to. I had to lie to her. I told her that Daddy was very busy. I couldn't tell her that her father would rather save the $40 that a trip to the movies would cost than see her smile. Popular Reddit comments on the update. 1. Anonymous User 5. The disconnect between your actions and your perception is clinical. You are furious that he buys her candy, a small loving detail from a father to a daughter, because you interpret it as an act of war against you. He is not stealing Luna's affection, he is being her father. You, on the other hand, are so obsessed with your victim narrative that you turn an innocent gesture into an affront. And the shoes. Did you really expect that after legally humiliating him, he would come with an extra check and a smile? You created this adversarial dynamic, now you live in it. App's response. It's not a loving detail, it's a reminder. It's him saying, "Look, I do have money, but I choose to give it to her in candy instead of to you for what's important." It's pure cynicism. And yes, after all, he is Luna's father. Isn't her well-being supposed to be above our conflict? His pride is so great that he would rather see his daughter with injured feet than admit I'm right. That's not being a father, it's being a big kid with a checkbook. Anonymous User 6. There's a word for what you're doing. Parental alienation. You are telling your daughter indirectly but constantly that her father is the bad guy because he doesn't give you more money. You are using that child as a weapon and as an instrument of emotional extortion. Julio is right not to give in. Giving in would be to validate your toxic behavior and give Luna the message that it's okay to manipulate people with pity. He at least is trying to maintain a normal relationship with his daughter despite your bitterness. Response from the parental alienation. That's an outrage. I have never told her your dad is bad. She lives it. She sees that we don't have what we used to have. She feels the tension. I tell her he's busy to protect her, not to poison her with the truth that her father is a petty man. If he wanted a normal relationship, he would provide normally. What he wants is a weekend relationship with candy without the real responsibility. That's not being a father, it's being a fun uncle. Anonymous User 7. Let's do simple math. $60 a week is $240 a month. You mentioned that you had to sell your tablet. That indicates that before the lawsuit you had assets. What did you do with the surplus when you received $800 a month? Did you save it, or did you spend it assuming the well would never run dry? Your story stinks of chronic financial mismanagement. Instead of blaming Julio, you should sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil and learn to make a realistic budget. The solution is not in his wallet, it's in your inability to plan. App's response. Surplus. What are you talking about? Do you think $800 a month is a fortune? After rent, utilities, food, and transportation for two. There's nothing left. Nothing. The tablet was old, a gift from years ago, and I sold it for $50, which is already gone on food. It's not a lack of planning, it's a lack of income. You people live in a cloud of farts where money magically stretches. In the real world, the numbers are raw. Final update. The event that changed everything, the one that sealed forever my conviction that I am the only person in this story who sees things clearly. It happened yesterday. Luna came home from school with a note from the nurse. She was complaining that she couldn't see the blackboard well. She needed an eye exam. Urgently, my heart stopped. I went to the nearest optician and the consultation plus. The cheapest glasses were over $50. That week's $60 already had an owner, the electricity and water. Panic took hold of me. I had no one else to turn to. With my pride in tatters, I dialed Julio's number. I explained it to him with a trembling voice, pleading. It's her eyes, Julio. It's not a whim. I can't afford it. There was a silence. Then he said, tell me which optician you're going to. I will go and pay for the consultation and the glasses directly. No, he said. I will help you. He said, I will pay directly. He wanted to make sure I wouldn't see a cent of that money. He wanted total control. I accepted because I had no choice. Half an hour later, he arrived at the optician's. I was already there with Luna. He saw her, hugged her, and told her in a calm voice that he hadn't used with me in years. Don't worry, sweetie. Daddy will take care of everything. While he filled out the paperwork and paid with his credit card, without batting an eye, I sat on a plastic chair feeling like a beggar, a servant, the poor nanny who is paid with crumbs. When everything was finished and Luna was trying on her new pink glasses, happy and relieved, Julio approached me. Luna was distracted, looking at her own reflection. He leaned in, and in a voice so low that only I could hear it, but laden with infinite contempt, he said, this is what you wanted when you went to court, Alara. You have your independence, you have your sentence. Enjoy your victory. His words pierced me like knives of ice. There was no concern in his voice. There was no compassion. Only the cold gloating of someone who has won a war that I didn't even know we were fighting. In that moment, looking at Luna smiling with her new glasses paid for by him as an act of forced charity, I knew the absolute truth. This was never about the money for him, it was about power. It was about teaching me my place, about showing me that he has the final control over our daughter's well-being and that I am just an obstacle in his path. He bought the glasses, but what he really acquired was the confirmation that he can trample on me whenever he wants. Now back home, I look at this week's $60 check on the kitchen table. It is green and cold. It is my trophy for having fought for what is right. It is the reminder that in a world of men like Julio, justice is a luxury that women like me cannot afford. And the worst thing is that Luna, with her new and perfect glasses, still can't see the monster that her father has become. Popular Reddit comments on the final update. Anonymous User 8. This update is the epitome of your twisted narrative. Julio does exactly what a responsible father would do. He ensures that his daughter has a medical need covered, paying for it out of his own pocket to prevent you from misusing the money. And you turn it into an act of malice and control. He paid directly. Of course he did. After you proved with your lawsuit that you are not trustworthy with finances, he is making sure that the money goes to his daughter's glasses, not to your whims. Your interpretation of his words as gloating says more about your paranoia than about his intentions. Response from the you weren't there. You didn't hear the tone of his voice. It wasn't that of a concerned father, it was that of a satisfied executioner. He didn't do it for Luna, he did it for me, to give me that message, to stick the sword in and twist it. If he really only cared about Luna, he would have done it in silence, without the final comment. But he didn't need that last stab. That gives him away. You people love to believe he's a saint, but saints don't enjoy the pain of others. Anonymous User. Knew the height of irony. Your daughter can finally see clearly, but you steadfastly refuse to do so. He is not a monster. A monster would have said, fuck them, it's $60. Deal with it. He acted, he solved the problem. You, on the other hand, contributed nothing but poison and drama. You are so entangled in your labyrinth of resentment that, even when the villain of your story acts with righteousness, you paint it as an act of supreme evil. Seek professional help. Really, response from the he didn't solve the problem, he framed it. Now every time Luna puts on those glasses, it will be a reminder that her daddy saved us from a crisis that he himself helped to create. He is the fire and the firefighter, and I am the crazy witch who complains about being burned. He is not righteous, he is a master manipulator, and you fall for his act. The professional help he needs is to learn to have an iota of real empathy. Anonymous User 10. There is a pattern here. You provoke a crisis. The lawsuit. The crisis generates a negative consequence. Reduced child support. The negative consequence creates a need. The glasses. The need is met by the person you attacked. Julio. He pays for the glasses. And your final conclusion is look how evil he is. You have created a closed circuit of misery where you feed on your own toxicity. Luna is the only one who loses here caught in the crossfire of your private war against reality. Response from the app. The pattern you don't see is this. He has the power. I rebel. He uses his power to crush me. You blame the one who rebelled. It's the same old story. I don't feed on toxicity. I drown in the one he generates. And Luna, if she loses, but not because of Crossfire, but because her father has deliberately chosen a path that harms both of us. Just to prove that he can. That is the only reality that matters.